Before gracing New Mexico with his presence, the kid lived for a short time in what was then Arizona territory, where he became involved in an altercation with a man by the name of Frank Cahill. Cahill was braggadocious, he was cruel, he was older, he was bigger than the kid, he was stronger than the kid, and his nickname of Windy Cahill came as a result of his long-winded stories. Now at this time it's the late 1870s, and Billy's going by the name Kid Antrim. After being arrested and then escaping from the Fort Grant guardhouse, he decided to stay local, either out of foolishness or bravado or maybe a bit of both. But on the evening of August 17th, 1877, fate provided Kid Antrim with a second and final chance to remake his decision. Inside a smoke-filled cantina, Windy Cahill and Kid Antrim were asking for trouble purely by sitting across from each other at the same card table. Cahill's behaviour was no different from usual. He relentlessly goaded and intimidated the kid, and at one point called him a pimp. Now that's a very strange insult to throw at someone who has no connection with prostitution. But I suppose if I'm honest, it does sound quite cool. I'd probably like to call someone a pimp under the right circumstances. In any case, Kid Antrim returned verbal fire by calling Cahill a son of a bitch, which, in a way that's worse. That's a lot worse than being called a pimp. I'm not saying being called a pimp is good. I don't know. He stepped it up a level. Insults are going round, people have said some things, we've all had a drink. As tempers boiled over, the physically mismatched pair began a brawl which ultimately led them outside. Now, from all accounts, and for want of a better expression, Frank Cahill was built like a brick shithouse, okay? He was not a small guy. Actually, he was a small guy in terms of height, but he had wide shoulders, he had a lot of experience. I think he served in the Civil War. So it's no real surprise that ultimately the kid ended up on the floor in the dirt with Cahill pinning him down. If his instincts had not been so quick and so violent, he would have either been soundly beaten or even killed at the hands of a more experienced and more capable opponent. What happened next would be his final act under the name Kid Antrim. Just as he would do 3 years later to Deputy James Bell on the stairs of the Lincoln County Courthouse, the kid was able to wrestle free his assailant's pistol. A split second later, a bullet was fired directly into Cahill's side, which allowed Antrim to break free. To my knowledge, no one stopped the kid from fleeing the scene, and if they did, their efforts were unsuccessful. He began to look for either the fastest or the closest horse that he could find, and wasted no time whatsoever getting out of the territory. Once he was clear enough away, somewhere in the solitude of the desert horse trails where Arizona bleeds into New Mexico, he was probably considering what his next alias might be. Henry Antrim, aka Kid Antrim, was dead, or at least he would be if he kept going by that name. Back in 19th century America, it was pretty common for people to disappear from one place only to pop up somewhere else with a new name and a new haircut. And for bounty hunters like Bass Reeves, tracking fugitives must have been like playing an outlaw edition of Whack-A-Mole. But it's worth mentioning that not all cases of identity fraud were people running from the law. It could be because of anything: a bad marriage, financial debt, religious persecution, or simply to reinvent themselves in the vastness of the West. The kid who had dramatically fled from Arizona territory after killing his first man was Henry Antrim, but the young man who arrived in New Mexico was William H. Bonney, and he was about to dive headfirst into an even greater level of mischief, mayhem, and murder.